All right, guys. Well, so this is an epic episode tonight. Thank you again for joining me for another BG Cast Wednesday live podcast. Guys, I've been looking forward to this interview ever since we set it in stone. The person I'm going to bring on is somebody that I've been watching her videos ever since she began. She has contributed to my spiritual evolution in so many ways. And I can't thank her enough for the work that she does and how she helps elevate the consciousness of this collective. And again, guys, this is really special. So I'm going to bring on first who's going to be heading the interview with me. Guys, Transcending Ascension. She's going to be sitting here with me, with Sarah tonight. I'm really looking forward to that. And guys, our guest is here. I'm going to bring her on. All right. And let me welcome Mrs. Sarah Elkhaldy, the Alchemist. Sarah, what's up? It's good to see you again.
It's good to see you too.
How's everything going? I've been watching some of your new videos, man, and I gotta say, I'm super impressed as always.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, the evolution of them is really interesting. Each few months, now I look like I'm looking back at like old baby pictures.
I could totally understand that. And let me tell you what, like I've seen you throughout the years, and I tell that you refine your methods as you go along too. Like I honestly see, like I even though you were already awesome before, I've seen you like make yourself kind of bring yourself up a little bit more, and like the way that you explain things, and the way that you break down these spiritual concepts. You do such a great job.
I really appreciate it because you have to know it's a labor of love. I cringe. But when I'm actually teaching, I'm in the flow of how can the audience member learn this best? And it's done in a very, what I would consider like animated way, or inner child comes through. Even when I'm talking about things that are like about the military industrial complex, I'm always thinking of how is the best way that they will learn it. And so it goes against my ego. So hearing this feedback from you greatly is appreciated.
Absolutely, Sarah. Absolutely. So let's dive right into it. I mean, there's a lot I really want to talk to you about. Hopefully we can get to it all. So I've been watching some of your newer videos, and one of the ones I kind of want to touch on is the revelation of the method, the karmic retribution. Because what I see a lot of in our community, even with people in our community, is some of us are still getting caught up in this subconscious programming that contributes to this karmic retribution. I think we're getting a lot of psyops thrown at us at this current period of time that can hit these what I would call emotional triggers within people, and I think we have to, as spiritually sovereign beings have this awareness of the effect. So if you don't mind, I know you kind of broke it down in the episode a little bit. If just for our listeners, you can break down the differences between revelation of the method and karmic retribution, so they can gain that awareness and kind of understand that a little bit themselves, so they don't get caught up in it again.
I love that you brought this up, because let me tell you, a running joke that I have with myself about some of my episodes is that deserved an Oscar or some sort of award. Let me tell you, when it first came into my awareness that karmic retribution was what revelation of the method was called, I got very confused. So I started watching just some quick content on it. And I could not figure out what was wrong yet. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't figure out where to untangle it. And so when I was listening to it, I went, that sounds like revelation of the method, but it sounds like it wrong. So I actually, when I was doing the video Karmic Retribution, as I was teaching it in that video, I was actually getting the downloads of what happened. And what happened was people were calling karmic retribution and revelation of the method the same thing. And I think that was, there's always accidental human error with anything. There's always the organicness of error. But I think that the error came from either a psyop or just the human's own programming psyoped itself into wanting to make it a different concept. And they are different concepts, but twisting it in a way where it lost all of the actual truth behind karmic retribution. Karmic retribution is the active form of
Exactly.
of reality manipulation, reality creation. And then revelation of the method, which actually has more than one form. And I'll make a video on the second form too, because I saw people have a lot of questions about what's going on at concerts. How is loosh being harvested there? Is that revelation of the method? Sometimes it's not. But anyways, I'll elaborate more on that in a video. But revelation of the method is the backdoor to creating reality. It requires our consent. So it's about telling a half truth to get in, because it requires our sovereignty. So because it requires our consent, they do everything in their power to make it sound like we don't even have free will, like we don't even have consent, like we don't even have sovereignty. They make it sound like, oh, okay, that's nice, while they're doing everything in their power to actually get us to sign off and get our consent. So that's going on in the back door. That's the passive form of reality creation, and karmic retribution is the active. And the funny part about these, which is what I discovered just by doing the video, I was getting the information, is that karmic retribution is based off of the complete opposite of revelation of the method. In karmic retribution, you can be told any lies possible. You don't have to be told any truth to make you commit an action that now you absorb the brunt of the karma for. So let me know where to go from there.
No, exactly. No, I think because exactly the same thing. I didn't know how to formulate. I didn't know there was a technical term behind it until I watched your video. And then like same thing with you, like I was watching it and it was like almost like it was filtering in. I was like, I kind of see exactly how this is playing out right before my eyes in the collective reality as we're going through this at this time. So where I'd like you to go with it, if you don't mind, is the awareness of what it is karmic retribution, the subconscious programming. Because there's our community, the spiritual community and the awakened community. We get our I guess our energies ruffled just as much as the consensual reality. And when it comes to certain things, seems like we argue about a lot too. But at the same time, I think really what we have to do is we have to gain this awareness of this so we don't fall for it anymore. So like that's definitely where I would like you to lead on with that is how we can see through this and we can have the, I guess you could say, oversight and the awareness of this happening to us so we don't buy into it and we diminish the energetic returns that they're trying to achieve through their manifestation.
Right. So this is really good because this goes deep into the reality of Dharma, first of all, and two, mommy and daddy. It all comes back to mommy and daddy. We're protecting mommy and daddy, even as we're dissembling our ego, even as we're meeting the truth. It's still protecting mommy and daddy government, mommy and daddy military industrial complex. So we have to twist things to make it sound to ourselves like something we can actually come to terms with as a truth. And then it's not truly the truth by the time it gets through the digestive tract of protecting mommy and daddy. And that's what I really want to hone in on before I talk about what karmic retribution is, because it hits the deepest nerve in our neocortex to the limbic system to the reptilian brain. Every part of our being will protect as a survival mechanism itself from the largest the largest inflictor of control. It's easier to look at the symptoms, right? It's easier to look at the left and go, oh, they're batshit crazy, and they are. But and over here and everywhere, it's easier to look at the branches on the tree, the symptoms, rather than go into where are these manifestations rooted in? What's fueling this? And so karmic retribution is when specifically what you could look at as the military caste system, right? Because if we're looking at things from a caste viewpoint, the warrior archetype. The warrior archetype is real, but it's been heavily manipulated on this planet to the point where it's almost like sometimes I look at myself and go, were you like literally just here? Was your mission specific to the warrior class? Because that's what I feel like a lot of my calling is directed at, because there's such a thing as the warrior. Of course, you know that, but the awakened spiritual warrior is collectively in a mommy and daddy programming where it's turned in the wrong direction. It's almost like having some sort of like giant, like megalithic thing headed in the wrong direction. And it's being controlled right now from archonic forces that are in control of the military industrial complex. So is there such a thing as the warrior caste? Is there such a thing as that? Well, that's technically divine masculine energy, but it's not in its healthy form. It's showing up as toxic masculine energy that's because of the military industrial complex. So all you would need to do actually to solve this is have healthy masculine energy, which is intellect and logic. Go, wait a second. Karmic retribution is when we're being told to take on the karma of some deed. So we can be lied to, we can anything to do the deed. Well, what's the biggest generator of all of the horrors of the world? What's consolidating banking systems right now? There's this huge dissonance, a cognitive dissonance, like a split schizophrenic psyche with people awakening who are aware of these things and then won't admit that it's the military industrial complex. And who's the ones, when we're scared of people, are we really scared of the elite? No, we're scared of what the elite can make people do against us. Who's those people that are doing the henchmen?
Exactly.
So that's the karmic retribution. It's the people who are doing the bidding, because the elite, they wouldn't even be called the elite if they didn't have henchmen. That's what dog tags are. And I hate saying this because I find it horrific. I think that they're victims too. And I think that they're getting manipulated to victimize other victims to make the victim perpetrator cycle. But it's a sick joke the elite have that they'll sick their dogs on us.
Oh, 100%, 100%. One thing I want to ask you, and then I want to hand it off to Mrs. Diana over here, Transcending Ascension. So you were talking about how the warrior energy has been misdirected and misguided. So today I actually did a write-up on the wild masculine energy. And I kind of want to get your thoughts on that. Is that the direction that we should be heading in when it comes to this? And I find it just to be a very profoundly interesting thing. And I feel like us as men who are on our spiritual evolution path should try to embody this energy as much as possible. So I'm curious about your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So that is the healing. That's the healing elixir for humanity, because none of this can really work on the extremes. And I've tried simply because it's easier to deliver messages to an already polarized audience, to an already polarized world. I wish I could deliver messages that were pointed in polarities. Unfortunately, it's the divine masculine in union with the divine feminine, which is the awakened heart. Ask any Mason who's worth their salt. Ask any mystery school tradition. All of the things that we're talking about the mind were actually called blinds. They were just secret layers until the brain really meant the heart. So this is, like the awakened heart is what is what they really don't want you to have. They want you all cut up. That's what trauma-based mind control does. It cuts you up so that then you're going to operate in the wounded form of either of these polarities. So when it comes to the awakened masculine energy, what that would look like is very clear. And that is being able to go against the grain, having the integrity to go, I don't care how many people are behind this momentum. I don't care if that person is the public figure that's giving me the facade of that funnel, of that pipeline. I can see past that. And even if I'm alone, right is right, wrong is wrong, even if I'm alone. That is the masculine energy in its healthy form. It's the one that says, I'm going to call this out, even if I'm the only one that sees it.
And I love that. I love your explanation of that. And I think that's that's where a lot of us are there per se, and I think it's starting to kind of I joke that we have two aspects to the spiritual awakening going on right now. We have the conscious aspect, and then we have the subconscious aspect. And then why I say the subconscious aspect is people like us, we're like energetic light posts. Like, we're grounding the higher frequencies here into this existence. And as we improve and we evolve in our spiritual evolution, that energy permeates into the collective field and into almost what I would say is a subconscious effect, because I've seen a lot of this lately. There's a lot of people who, even if they are not aware of what's going on, they're getting into things like homesteading. They're starting to become more in touch with nature. Like, they're starting to maybe get into different spiritual practices. I see like this subconscious, like almost I would say butterfly effect, kind of permeating into the human collective. And I think that's where we're kind of heading, is that, us, the energetic light posts, are going to help kind of facilitate this. And I think it's a cool job. Diana, did you want to say anything about that?
Oh, I completely agree. And I came to the country to homestead myself because the call is just so huge right now to be the example, to be the one, the cheesy, the way shower of Jesus. Like embodying that Christ consciousness means like putting on your big girl pants and stop whining, stop blaming, stop making excuses, take all the blame. And that's where the alchemy happens, the alchemist. And then that's where you see the transcendence. That's where you see the manifestations start to happen. Like, it's not like when you get in and it's all about learn to manifest, no, it's learn to heal, awaken the heart center, take all the blame, literally, because we're all God. So fundamentally, everything is our fault. And you feel that you transcend it, and boom, the lived example just automatically happens.
Beautiful. Yes.
Absolutely. So, Diana, did you want to talk about any karmic retribution questions with Mrs. Sarah over here?
Karmic retribution. I kind of see what you're saying there about, I completely see what you're saying there. And that's why I refuse to give light to any of that conversation, that they're always trying to get stuck in the darkness. And tell me if I'm wrong here, but like, we bring awareness, right? You have to know it, all the bad things, all the days, the overlords, all the horrible stories. You know the truth, and then you see where you're at. You see how you can solve it. And right now, this is the best I can think of. And I'm not even joking. Like, I did my education in journalism. This is the best I can think of. Like, engineers, lawyers, what can we do? Like, you being extremely smart and helping, even like people like me, I've been studying this stuff forever, but you help bring it all together, like all the different occult teachings and Buddhism and even Christ consciousness, which a lot of people, like, they're starting to wake up to that. Like, if we got the Christians on board, like, bam, because they have such a huge population. Like, that's what we need, is to wake people up, know the bad stuff. Okay. But then now what do we do to fix it? We need to point the all is mind, the law of care, towards where we can make it better. And that's where our energy should be focused on. That's where we should be looking. So absolutely, like, knowing the people need to know that's what they're doing. And that's a brilliant way of putting it, because I've been trying, like, I try to tell people, like, they always want to go, oh no, poor me. Oh no. And it's like, yes, but there's an urgent factor here on moving on, because the energies are so much stronger now, that if you're in a poor me place now, you're going to be more hurt by it than you would have been previously. Like, it's insane. So we need to be focusing on the higher light. So yeah, people need to know that they're helping they generate the darkness. And I feel like once everybody knows this, not even the people that like seem like NPCs, which I'm glad you said there's no such thing as NPCs, because I'm always trying to tell people, no, they're real. It's just so frustrating to accept that they won't see anything. So I think if we just, that's like, it's like, we need to just get them to see it and go, yes, that's true. And then bam, that'll be like the rocket shoot. And then the other ones that want to get involved, like, it's that pyramid, right? It's that, the being the lights, and then some are bigger lights at the top. It's always, so I can only say I completely agree with everything you say all the time.
Well, there's no dharma for a human to kill unless you're a psychopath. So one can't say, they can't use the excuse, even if they're in the warrior class, of, well, it was my dharma to carry that out. Well, that was misconstrued Vedic teachings that just kept spreading due to literally the dark occultists. That's what we would call the demiurge. So to look at everything as a caste system and to say, well, you're fulfilling your role this lifetime as a warrior by killing. No, the divine masculine comes in and says, actually, I understand how you manipulated that truth. There was a truth there. Warrior energy is do no harm, take no shit. So a warrior is one that got corrupted to just be like, no, you're a mindless mechanical killing machine. And if you ever hear that you were just following orders and that you're actually not responsible for that and you're offended, don't ever call yourself a warrior. So I'm called constantly to bring the harsh truths on top of, like I don't lose sleep at night, like I do what I do because of love. And I see that like if the deepest medicine is this, fine. And I don't always need to. My ego isn't like, I'm Sarah, the one that dishes out the deep medicine all the time. But when I do get a call for a message, I can see no one else is picking it up in the ether. And I tell the universe, I'm your girl. You need it, I'm your girl. I'll do what, like it's fine. So with that, it's the truth of bringing this stuff to light, even if it's not popular, it's not going to make friends, because, movements have a lot of sensation behind them. And I'm not against the movements, but the sensation usually is fueled by such distortions of what it's going against the actual movements. And that's why, like, I just don't.
I'm with you. I feel like right now what we're getting is we're getting extremes and illusions presented as actual reality. And I think that is exactly what's distorting this a lot. I mean, we're seeing it even ramp up even more on an energetic level. I think, if we look at what is presented to the consensual narrative as actual reality, and it's always an extreme. It's always swaying into the extreme areas of the polarity. And I think what happens with that is that even catches on to our community, because we still have people in our community who are still they have one foot in the dualistic box and one foot out. You know what I mean? They're looking at non-dualistic thinking and they're like reaching for it, but like there's still that part of them. And I think, where the extremes and illusions come into play, I think that's something we all absolutely have to be aware of. And that's one thing I really like about you, Sarah, is you talk about discernment constantly and being spiritually sovereign constantly. And I do like that you are somebody who talks about this context matter and you deliver it the way it is. And that's the way I think it should be. You're being raw with it. And that kind of brings me to my next topic, which is one of your shows another one of your episodes. But this has seemed to have been an argument in our community quite a bit. The free will is not an illusion, and here's why. I can't tell you, how many people I've sat there and I've watched debate, saying that free will is an illusion. No, it's not. But I feel like you've broken it down in such a way that can really showcase that it's truly not an illusion. I really liked how you brought up the potentials in the video as well when it comes to the potentials in that timeline or that reality. So if you don't mind breaking it down a little bit, let's explain to people why free will is not an illusion and, how we can get more of it.
Yes. I want to say first, when I started my career, I never thought that I would have to have one of the pillars of my teachings be free will is not an illusion. I am speechless. I am speechless at how much I've done 3 videos on it so far, and I'm going to do more. I'm not going to stop, but for this, yeah. So here's the thing. It's based off of particle physics, right? So when you get really smart people who are explaining things, they're doing it from the paradigm. They're doing it from the dimension of particle physics inside time. And so none of that is really wrong, except it's fueling the paradigm of the demiurge. So the demiurge is, so Christ consciousness is always known. Well, actually, now I don't. I'll teach this in a video. I'll make a video on this. Christ consciousness is the energy of free will. I don't think people know that, and I don't think I've made a video on that yet. So Christ consciousness represents free will. When you have Luciferian energy, which I do not bash Luciferian energy. So many esoterics got mad at me for my Luciferian video. And I understand the complexity there with and I understand the good with that archetype. But you have on one side for esoteric Christianity or for Rosicrucianism, you have one side Luciferian energy trying to constantly save you from the material plane. And then on the other side, you have Ahrimanic energy or satanic energy. Guess what they both have in common? Both of these two extreme poles don't believe in free will. The only one that you get free will from is if you do eros gamos. When you have unified the hemispheres, that's called Christ consciousness. Christ consciousness is the one that is in the most ancient traditions was the Mithra archetype. The Mithra archetype was known for the one that can take you out of the demiurge. And I'm fine with all of the archetypes from there, Christ consciousness being the latest one, bringing with it more free will. So all of these were known starting from its most ancient conception. Okay, you know the skull and bones?
Absolutely.
Skull and bones represented Saturn, the demiurge. And what that means is time. That's what the death of the skull means. It means you're in Chronos, which is Saturn, which is time. Meaning there's no free will. You're inside the demiurge's space. And in here, there's no free will. You're only operating in fate. What Mithras was the first archetype of doing, but Christ is the newest one, is the precession of the equinox. With the precession of the equinox, all of a sudden, time changed. And that's what's represented as Christ consciousness, meaning, oh, by the way, the blueprint is if you embody both hemispheres, you're no longer bound by fate and time space of predestiny, meaning you have free will.
Absolutely. And that's, yeah, go right ahead, Diana.
I've wanted to know this. Okay, so anthropic principle, right? You know it? Do you like how we exist at the same time as time and space? It's at the same time. God's printing us and we're printing God. So the stars are that, like your astrology, even your human design throws argument to no free will. Because you can, if you get it properly done, you can bank everything in your life. But if you go to that place of Dharma, if you go to that place of transcendence, you do escape it. So what is your thought in everything that you know? Are we changing the stars? Like that's always been like an old, like I think it's a Greek proverb of changing your stars. Do we actually change the stars? Because I know that's getting real out there, and that's going past that like Chronos time space. That's escaping that Saturn block, which a lot of the flat earthers like to say like the filament is blocking us in and we can't get past it. But if we go to that higher transcendent space, we escape it, like with our energy body, higher soul things. And yes, we, the human and attached with our higher selves, are changing the stars. Yes, because there's things I read in my astrology 10, 15 years ago that was like, yeah, that's my astrology. And there's things I read in my astrology this many years later at the place I am now going, that is also my astrology. And it's like something, it's growing with me. Like, so what are your thoughts?
So they work together, and I have a video on this called Reach Your Destiny or something destiny. So destiny is the exalted form of fate. Fate is not meant to be like against us, even though the karma that comes from fate can be negative. So it is against us, but it's against us, but it's giving you always some sort of option should you choose to transmute it. So there's always like some sort of like gap in between everything that looks so completely cemented fate. And we have to, and our job, so fate challenges us. And that's what Saturn does too, so it's the challenger. And the more evolved and awakened you get, the I would almost say it's harder. But
Absolutely.
anyways, yeah, because you could go into that later if we want. But basically, the destiny presents this option in a sea of timelines, and destiny goes, and it doesn't even arise until we have exercised some of our free will. So it's not even there, but it emerges from the sea of possibilities once we start awakening. And what destiny represents is what you're speaking about, like this beyond time thing. So fate in this sense isn't adversarial. It's helping us It's like helping us cultivate it. So it could suffocate us, but also if we transmute the fate by accepting it and saying, these are the cards, let's play this hand to the fullest. That's what love your fate means. It doesn't mean to actually love it. It doesn't mean love that I'm autoimmune. That was my challenges this life. Love this. It's not asking you to actually love it. What it's saying is play it to the best of your ability. And should you do that, you reach now timeless zone. And that's where destiny is. So that's why destiny is not a given, but fate is.
Very interesting. I would almost, and I wonder if you would agree with me on this, Sarah, because I remember your video on prophecies and the prophetic mindset. Would you consider almost like focusing too much on fate? Would that be a consciousness trap in and of itself? I mean, do you feel like that getting obsessed or getting too highly focused in that is doing you more harm than good? Because I remember what you were talking about with the prophetic mindset, with the prophecies, and you were saying that you attach yourself to that outcome if that's what you're seeking, or that's what you're bringing into your mind space. So I'm just curious if it's almost similar in that aspect, you would feel.
Absolutely. That is an amazing connection you drew, because absolutely, when a person is paying attention too much to the prophecy, what happens, I would say way more times than not, is they're becoming more dumb. I don't mean it in a mean way. I know
what you're saying. I know what you're saying. You're all good.
Yeah. So they're lowering the essence of it and the concept, and that traps them in the fourth density of whatever that is. And in the fourth density, if you're feeding into like, well, I told this and stuff, then it's going to be a consensus reality that you get drawn to. And so one of the largest things that I have learned from my own journey is that the Christ consciousness energy, like Buddhic consciousness, is higher, and they're not in a war. There's different frequencies and planes of consciousness for different things. Christ consciousness is the most important because it's the most relevant to us, because Christ consciousness is the energy that is always why it got called the savior, is because it's the one that awakens the person out of amnesia from the lower densities. So there is such a thing as those prophecies having truth to them, but what's stronger about them is that they are the predestined. They are the fate. They aren't the destiny. But here's the thing. Even if there's the same truth behind them and there's a destiny configured in there, paying too much attention to it still lowers your consciousness from the true essence of it, from the destiny of that. Yeah. And that's why there's like a billion. They're a dime a dozen. And let me tell you, the clickbait on them is probably going to be worse for humanity than the actual prophecies themselves. The fact that we get rewarded by having people, and like, I'm probably the biggest person who is prophetic. So I'm not saying this in like a bad way, but like, we all live playing profit for clickbait stuff. And if we don't do that responsibly, then that's actually going to be the thing that curtails everything into, the lowest possible timeline. It's the fact that, oh my God, what did this person say? Oh, Revelation is about hell. Wait a second. My ego hasn't done any inner work, and I have a camera and I have a YouTube channel. Like, everyone is pumping their prophecies. Not everyone, but the majority of what's funneling everything is the clickbait, which sensationalizes a concept, which cuts it off from its most spiritual, refined, subtle meaning that will actually be the fruit of knowledge that helps us ascend.
One thing you said, I've always used this analogy when I'm describing, because I think you just hit the nail on the head. I call it the Truman Show analogy, but instead of being advertised products, we're advertised narratives and trains of thought. And whichever train of thought or narrative we buy into becomes our subjective reality. And if enough of the collective buys into this narrative or this train of thought, it manifests into the collective reality. And I think that's kind of what you're hitting there, especially, you know, when we're talking about the sensationalism and the clickbait. You know, I still feel that, you know, a lot of our in our community are gravitating towards this place of fear. And I feel that kind of catalyzes that. Diana, do you have any thoughts on that?
Just 100% agreeing. Yeah, that's what, like, I wanted to ask you, what would you say we should focus our attention on? I know you've mentioned healing energy and sound healing, and there's light therapy. So we have lots of healing things to look at, to manifest. But there's a big dark side to technology, just EMFs all around us. Like, and the sound healing and all that can help counterbalance it. But yes, manifesting the good future is the best thing we can do right now. And you, being the smartest person I've ever heard, knows, like, with all your knowledge, like, because all I can think is peace and love, and I know it's cheese and Christ consciousness. That's how I found you, was like searching Christ consciousness, but occult, esoteric style, because Christianity is just like, no, like, so but it's that's good, that's a yes. But like, we have this future world, and I am homesteading, but I love technology. I don't want to just live in the forest, even though that would be magical. But I do also want technology. So how do we do this? How do we start, like, I'm all for leaving the fear behind, looking at it, I saw it, good, I'm not going to do it. Now let's do the good things. But what are they? Like, what are they? Because we have been pumped, all the media, everything we've been taught our whole lives is negative.
Absolutely. So this is a deeply internal spiritual job, and I will explain. First, before I even get into that, I want to say that being social media pure, if somebody feels that and they're not coming from like a bunch of denial, resentment, anger, great. But it's a part of the assignment this age. So we didn't come here to then be like, okay, let's fully rebuke it. Do we have to take it on responsibly? Yes, absolutely, have a healthy relationship. But the Mayan calendar even shows that the quicker connections are made for the human consciousness is accelerated is through the technology. And so why I'm saying that is because sometimes people in the spiritual community get confused when it comes to like, oh yeah, you're a part of the problem because you're talking about all this stuff in front of a camera. You're a fraud. And it's laughing because, like, okay, every time period had their assignment. We don't have the assignment of people 2,000 years before us. So the assignment this year, if there was like Christ, let's pretend it was one person, even though it wasn't, they'd have a podcast. They'd have a podcast. They would go, I'm going to go be mad with these 12 people in a cave. Like, there's different assignments. So it's being in harmony. I just wanted to relay that to you in case you had any like personal resistance towards that. But anyways, aside from that, so the real thing is deeply personal. And I will give you an example. Can I stop the wars going on in the world? I cannot by the people badgering me too. People who aren't doing nothing like to leave snarky comments on my account that I'm some sort of spiritual bypasser because I don't talk directly about Israel and Palestine. They can't see the finer, the more subtle, energetic work that's going on behind the scenes, which is me literally deprogramming people's consciousness from that paradigm. So they get mad if you don't like say things at their level of consciousness, at that level. And that level is where you will just throw more gas on the fire anyways. It's not going to solve anything. It might make your spiritual ego feel good that you virtue signaled or whatever. But I did that for a very long time, and I didn't do it for virtue signaling. I did it because I went, like everyone else who's honest and sincere, through the second wave of ascension. And the second wave of ascension is when you're in warrior mode and you're coming from true heart-centered compassion, not the programmed virtue signaling compassion. So when you're a true heart-centered warrior, you're angry. You found out about the elite, you found out about banking, you found out about these, all that. So I actually, for a very long time, and I lost jobs because I was a production assistant in LA because I wanted to be an actor and a director at that time. I lost jobs and friends for speaking out, for speaking for the injustices in Palestine. So other people online didn't have the like loss of income or the loss of connections that I had. So what I did in my latest video come full circle. For Sarah, what I did to heal what's happening in the world right now, since I'm not responding to the things in the world from another person's lower level frequency, I'm responding to it from my frequency. And that's what we all have to do first. We all have to do it from our frequency and not be tempted or lowered or baited into lower frequencies of the work. But how I chose to do that alchemy was acknowledge side by side Arab mysticism and Jewish mysticism. And I even said that Jewish mysticism has done the best job at preserving this knowledge about how to manifest. Okay, to someone else, they might not have batted an eye. To me, that was pure fucking global alchemy, because to know my past, to know my journey, and then to know where I've come now, and to give more spotlight, even though it was very brief, and have them brothers side by side, Arab and Jewish mysticism, in a time where it's very easy for me to go point now at all the people I laughed at who were laughing at me, and to not return that and say, hey, how you like them apples? Now people are, looking at you guys like you're the bad guys. But to now put them side by side was a huge ripple effect energetically. So Absolutely. Even though we can't see them nobody would have known that. But I knew that I shifted massive energies by doing that. And if we can do that on a level where it's so subtle that no one else has to really know, but that for us, we bridged a huge war within our own internal psyche by doing something, and to another person, we don't have to go around tapping people and go, hey, do you know that was really big of me? But if we can really pull in that level of like unity, so that our actions are coming from that place, that's going to do what you had already mentioned earlier, which is on the subtle realm, massively shift the momentum towards a morphic resonance field, or what they call the 100th monkey.
It's almost like you created a egregore out of it almost in the way that you did it, because and I saw that and I was profoundly impressed, because that was true alchemy. The way how you used it was almost in like what I would call super tact. Almost like it was very interesting to me. The one thing I want to talk to you about real quick, that you were talking about with the whole technology thing, and how in this technological age, I was actually having this conversation with somebody the other day, and you'll probably really appreciate that. It's something we have to take into account, because back in the old days, in order to get a hold of one spiritual book, you would have to hop on a potential 2-month boat ride. Okay. And then once you got to land, you would have to hike up this mountain plateau, which could take days on end, to get to this monastery or this place that had this book. So you could actually, take a look at the contact matter and learn from it. And, this is why I joke that I call it totality now. And I've heard you use that term before, I believe. It would take lifetimes, because of the current aspect that we were in. We would have to go and seek this different stuff. And now that we're in this age, this internet age, this information age, we have all of these spiritual books and all of this spiritual learning at the tip of our fingertips. Diana, what did you want to ask about that? Or what did you want to say about that?
Oh, yeah. Okay. I don't know if you want to tell, but you've hinted that you've been in mystery schools, and I want to know which ones. And I want to know what your best teachers are, because you got me on to Dion Fortune, and my goodness, wow. Because I knew Kabbalah before, I'd already studied it, but now I'm I never used to be able to name myself. I grew up an atheist, and then I went through all these spiritual things. And I know I liked Christ consciousness and blah, blah, blah. I was in the wind, but she has just nailed in, that is my pillar. And I always talked about the tree of life. In most of my videos, I reference it to the point people are annoyed, where I talk about middle pillar. That's the point, Lucifer, Satan, blah, blah, blah. But I never actually looked at anything besides the tree, with the Sephiroths and actually going up. So Dion Fortune, thank you. And Carl Jung, I already liked Carl Jung. I already knew him from a psychological standpoint, but you're just thing you put on Instagram, because I see you as I want to know what you know. I want to get to that place you are, because YouTube has become a dry desert besides you, because it's all clickbaits and people getting cults and join my online community. And of all the people not to have one is you, to not have I want to know more. And I joined your Instagram, but what would you say people should be looking at to get to that next level? Him and I always talk about what tangible magic have you seen? Because like we're starting to see stuff. He can hear stuff now. Like we are in it to like actually be wizards. Like, you know what I mean? Like we really want to do it. So like, where do we go next? And like the Golden Dawn, I'm big at Mathers. Like, so he's like a big resource. I find the early 1900s are like the best place to look to actually understand it. Because unfortunately, the earlier books are a little beyond my intelligent level to like comprehend, like when they wrote them in the actual alchemist days, you know what I mean? So like, where do you go? Where do you learn?
Great question. So just really quick, I'm aware of Dion Fortune. I've never learned a thing from her, but I'm aware of her and how in depth she went into the Sephiros and how much she contributed to, especially, you know, female occultism in
Rare.
later century. But so I just came from like in the beginning of my awakening. First off, I was learning things on my own. So I've always been Gnostic, and I find Hermeticism still in the category of Gnostic. And every time I go, okay, I'm finally going to expand, I expand, and the core things that I believe still fall under the category of Gnostic. So I'm Gnostic in just a metaphysical way, not like I practice and it's about this book, but like I'm Gnostic to the bone. I got a Hermetic heart and I'm Gnostic to the bone. So
I dig it.
Yeah. So when it comes to which phase of my journey, I feel like logic played a really strong role for a basis for me to have in college. And then from there, when I started, you know, getting into Gnostic material, and then it started combining with New Age. So at that point in my life, a huge resource was Tom Montauk. You guys might know him, montauk.net.
Yep, I've heard of Tom Montauk before.
Tom Montauk was a huge resource for my awakening, and with that came the channeled material. So these are like different eras of Sarah. So like for the age where I was literally being interacted with negative beings, like right now, like not just in dreamscape, that was when I was learning about the negative dark agendas. And I would be on forums and other people weren't having the experiences I had. So I didn't have a troubleshoot. I didn't have people. So I started reaching out to a shaman, and she was probably one of the strongest, like when I look back, pillars of my journey, even though I've learned from so many different systems. I'm self-taught, I'm a projector. So, you know, a lot of times people can't even understand how I have the bandwidth for these things. And it's really just my nature. You know, I would get, I like to consume information because that's my design. But when it comes to specifically my own gnosis, that was operating a lot of the time. So I would get information from things, but I would fill in the blank, and I didn't even realize that that's not what it was teaching. And it's because that was almost just giving me some sort of like thing to taste. And then I was coming up with gnosis. So a lot of the times, that's why when people go like, that's not the teaching, I'm like, that's why I don't claim to come from any system, because I want the freedom of just being like, look, you guys, I'm a mystic. Take this or leave it. I don't have much proof, but I'll try to bridge it through mysticism. But at the end of the day, if this teaching or this thread of mysticism is not standing by what I said, I did my best, but this is my claircognizance.
Yeah, I feel that. I don't. That's why you have like that grounder, and that's what the difference. That's why I want the teachers, so I don't look like a channeler, because I get you. That's like I read stuff and I have these huge epiphanies, but it's like, but I want to be like, but Dion Fortune said it. So
sometimes it's easier. Sometimes I deliver a message. Okay, this is like only 20% of the time. This isn't all the time I say this, but sometimes when I say mystics or mysticism, it's really out of like, I don't know, people think that every time I do anything, it's ego, but really it's actually my cognizance. But I don't want to just say that. And it's easy because whoever's a part of my audience who's more open to that, great. But I'm also trying to be a bridge and use my heart center as a space for those, you know, not fully on the whole, you know, reductionist, materialist spectrum, but I'm trying to be as much as I can in integrity. And if I just say mystics or mysticism, that's I'm not giving you sources or anything inside my description. I'm not a freaking research paper, so I don't have to play by those rules. But at the same time, that's me at least trying to help people digest the material better.
And I would completely agree. And I think one thing a lot of us or some of us can do in the spiritual community is we can get very hyper fixated on the logistics and the details of things. And I think in a lot of ways that can strip our humanity from it a little bit. We almost become robotic with the teachings, and we almost become like, like it has to exactly line up with this, or it has to exactly line up with that. And one thing I kind of want to go back to, I give you so much props for breaking down and digesting the Luciferian energy. It is not a dualistic thing. A lot of people throw it into that box. You know what I mean? They don't understand the balance of it. And I just want to give you props for that. But, back to what I was saying, I digress. Yes, we get caught up in the hyper logistics and hyper fixated on the logistics and the details. And it almost strips away the subjective experience and the openness we can have. I mean, what do you think about that?
Absolutely. So what I'm always thinking, the same way that I cringe at how I teach, I'm always putting first what the priority is. How is this the best for the person to be taught? And sometimes I feel that if I go too much into defending myself about the source, and here, this person said that, it was this. Like sometimes people call me ego because it was this other person's teaching. And I'm not talking from the sage. I'm talking like Manly P. Hall or masonry or things like that. And it's like, what's more egoic? Having people in the comments now fixated about who said that, or just leaving things open and you could tell that I'm not taking credit for that.
Yeah, exactly. No, and I'm with you, and it's almost as if like a lot of people who are starting to, approach this spiritual evolution and start to entertain that within themselves, they have to remove the mental block, is what I call it. It's almost like we can be our own worst enemy when it comes to our spiritual evolution, and that's something I've found too, and you'll probably resonate with this as well, is that everything is not as complicated as it's made out to be. It's actually quite simple when you take a look at everything. And I got to say, I've dealt with that too, Sarah. When it comes to things, and it is, we leave it open, and we leave it open to interpretation. And I think you do a fantastic job with that. So let me get into something real fast, and we have a lot of stuff we want to talk with you about, but this is one thing that actually came up in your hidden laws of conscious manifestation video that it almost like hit me with lightning, because I've said this before, and this is like, so you're talking about the opportunities when you switch yourself into that giving mindset, or that giving frequency with the absolute. And you said that, these opportunities and the divine come through people. And I've always said this, and I'm sure you've experienced this too, and I'd love to get your thoughts, that if the divine is going to communicate with you in a literal sense, it's going to do it through a loved one or a really, really close friend. And I'm just curious if you've ever kind of had that experience, and I'd like to pick your brain on that.
Absolutely. So much of the time, including myself, we wish we could cut the environment out of the equation. What's the quickest way to manifest without nothing? Give me the lotto, right? Because no people are it. We don't have to learn or grow through people. We just got the lotto.
Exactly.
But in God consciousness, I mean, after I had a very profound awakening, it was hard for me to function in the world, because I thought everyone who was talking to me was saying something from DMT level and they were God. So for me, it's not that hard to picture a loved one saying something and it really being the divine speaking through them.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so things come through our reality. And because of that, opportunities or experiences or all of that stuff. One thing that I'm going to actually do is sometime make a follow-up video on exactly how to do the law of equivalence, because I noticed that, and it's bound to happen with anything, something will not be understood, but I feel like I needed to clarify that more. So I'm going to do a video. It's not necessarily about thinking like, oh, okay, the law of equivalence is somebody's giving me something, and how can I hot potato give it back? It's almost about becoming so touched at the fact that it's received, that the fact that it's touched makes us open wider to it. And when we open wider to it, why are we doing that? Why are we opening wider to something? Because we're touched.
It's that emotional, it's that I feel, because when we feel that touched feeling, it is because we're expressing, not only on an emotional level, but an energetic and a frequency level, a feeling of pure gratefulness. And I really think that is where that comes into play. I mean, what do you think?
Yes. When we are so touched that someone did something, or whatever it is, that we received something, that opens us wider to it. And then when we're open wider to it, we're opening wider because the thing, we don't know this. It's hard to put into words what I'm trying to say, but we don't know
I
this.
understand, trust me.
But the opening wider to it is actually coming from a giving.
I get you. I feel what you're putting down.
It gets rid of resistance, right? Because resistance creates like energy blockages and stuff. Like that's just one thing I'm taking from it. Like when you allow it, you're allowing that energy to come in and our energy can play together. That's just one angle I'm seeing here, where if you resist it and you go, oh, it's too much of a favor. Oh, now it's awkward. Oh, you're shooting off their favor. Their energy is hitting your block and it's just dissonance now. Like that's just what I'm seeing when you talk.
Yeah, so there's two levels to it. Anytime someone's done something very touching to me, I instantly go into how can I give back? So there's that layer to it, but that also can come from a mixed bag. There's another layer. So the first layer would be obviously like how can I give back? But as long as it's not coming from wounding, like I don't know how to hold, I don't know how to receive. Gotcha. So there's that level of like, I'm so grateful for this in touch. How can I give back? And then there's another layer, and that another layer I'm having a hard time putting true words to, but the best I can do at the moment is, let's say that we found out right now that Source really wants to give to us, because we found out what the law of equivalence form is, and that Source's nature is to give. Source wants to give to me? To give to me? And that's its nature? Well, wait. And then we try to change its nature. We go, what does it want from me? What does it? And then what if we truly just learn that it wants to give and fulfill? It wants fulfillment. So then we're so touched by that then we go, well, if it'll make you happy, that's it. If it goes, oh, if giving to me will make you happy, do you see how that we're taking now because it's giving actually? That's it. I don't know how to put that in an example for real life, but I'll make a video.
And no, I'm with you. And you know, Sarah, I'm sure you can resonate with what I'm about to say. When we're trying to really describe, the broader scope of what's going on, words and language start to break down. they start to just become, But since you brought it up, and this was actually, one of my favorite videos that you did in the past. We're going to talk about that sweet nectar DMT. I never got to ask you last time you were on the show. I was curious about if you've ever had an experience with it. And if you did have an experience, if you don't mind sharing it with us, we would really like to hear, especially somebody of your caliber who went on that breakthrough path.
Yeah, so I didn't know that people could not break through. I broke through right away. I found out later after I did it that like through the language, because I wanted to be cool. I wanted to know the language, and I was like, what's breakthrough? And then I found out that people don't break through. And I was like, oh, that thing that I did right away. So I went into one of the main things I went into was this metallic pastel realm, and there was much there, but the thing that I feel called to tell you the most is there was somebody there on a couch, like a male energy on a couch, And it was replicating, the best I could do with words was, his intention was kept going, it's okay. It's okay. And he came from so much love. And the best I could do is describe, pretend somebody at like a high school party was on a couch and they were trashed. And the person next to them was just trying to go, how can I make them not freak out? Like, that's kind of the vibe. He was being so lovingly compassionate and just kept saying like, it's okay. It's okay. And I was all of the wars in the world. And so he was trying to just be like, yeah, I know the third dimension's hard. And so it was like trying to show that like how much negativity is in the world needs that type of energy in response to it. And then after that, some of my star family were so excited to see me, and they gave me a surgery where they put a rainbow grid in me.
Interesting. You know, I've seen a lot of commonalities in that experience with the surgery. You know, that is an interesting thing that I've experienced myself in these experiences before, and many others. And thank you for sharing that with us. That was really cool to hear that from you. And I actually, you know, you might resonate with what I'm about to say. And this is something I experienced, and I've always wanted to get your thoughts on this. I didn't get a chance to in the last one. So I have a little saying I like to say: the human is the ET/angel, and the ET/angel is the human. And I didn't know if potentially you maybe had some kind of realization or experience of that fact about yourself while you were there.
Oh, yeah. But that was more so the time that I was talking about earlier, where I said I had one particularly intense awakening and I never came back from that. So I'm just living that out still now. And that's why I like coming from a grounded ego space of Sarah, because if I don't come from Sarah, the ego, I'm just in samadhi. I'm in samadhi.
I gotcha.
So I sometimes need to ground when I go into teaching, or sometimes right now when I'm connecting with somebody and I have to, and they're talking and I'm like, act normal, but I'm in samadhi. So I don't know why everyone thinks like samadhi is the answer to the world, because we need to like bring that into like the body, and that would be the answer to where we have to like be egos in samadhi. But anyways, that experience was a shrooms trip, and that shrooms trip was, I was not expecting that at all, and it blew me open, and I wrote poetry about it, and it changed me forever. And it's really like BC AD for me. That trip was like before the tent, and then after the tent. Yeah, it changed me forever, and it was super traumatic. And I was downloaded God consciousness. So I had my awakening that I'm God, and that everyone's God, and that I'm so much drama because I'm fighting and I'm creating wars and I'm doing all of that. And I was like, oh my God. And I had so much shame. And I was like, no. And then I thought that if I went to the bathroom, I would actually leave this reality. And I had to go to the bathroom really bad.
Okay, man, I can imagine. And I'm guessing when you got in there, it escalated even more potentially.
To the bathroom?
Yes.
Oh, well, I thought I was going to leave this reality. So all of the fighting was before I got out of the tent, because I thought I was an angel. I was an angel. And I was like, oh my God. Yeah. So I got downloaded everything. And the most that I've even shared this knowledge, and I've had several opportunities to revise. I've had several opportunities. I've gaslit myself out of this truth. I have gone, Sarah, that was just psychosis. Come back down. All this stuff. No, I know that no matter how much I grow, that was the truth, and I keep coming back to that truth. So I have gnosis about what's going on. And anyways, that's my truth.
I find that absolutely amazing. Then thank you and so much for sharing that experience. So Diana, do you have anything to say about that?
Just that I had the same experience, except mine was on E, although obviously it released the DMT too. And bam, I was God, because I thought I was gonna die, because I was scared. I was like, oh no, I'm gonna die. Oh no. And then, but bam, all of a sudden I was fine. I was like, that's it. I am God. And I knew everything about everything. I kept going, guys, I know everything about everything. And then I went and spent the whole night writing my memoirs about how I was God and how I was going to fix everything. I had all the plans for everything. My mom found it. I was 18 at the time, but from them, I knew I was God, but I was raised an atheist, and slowly but surely I talked myself out of it. And I spent like 5 more years as an atheist before finally just getting back on and being like, nope. And then, the journey, but like, that's still there. That experience never left me. It's like, it was yesterday. I wish I could remember just that we are all God. We are all one person. It goes up and just like up and up and up and up until we just keep coming into the one. And like, I saw it all. Like, it was nuts. And then every time I keep learning new stuff, it like links back to that original experience.
Yeah, we're all one. And like before that trip, I thought like we're all one because of course we have empathy. After that, I got it. I was like, oh no,
literally,
we're all one. We're one. So I've never come back down from oneness. That's what I was calling samadhi. So now I just deal with it, and I'm doing a pretty good job. People can't tell, but if you want to know the if you want to know the like what I think, it's in my video, The Spiritual Roots of Narcissism. That's the full download. I told you like the buzz clip parts, but if you want the full breakdown, I think that we fell in consciousness from that truth, and we're in spiritual amnesia, and I lay it all out in that video.
There's I definitely want to ask you that before we hop on to the next thing. So I'm curious to ask your opinion on what the fall could potentially have been. This is something I've entertained quite a bit. I do think that, at least in my eyes, it was agreed upon to experience this, but there was a what you would say a sleight of hand involved in it as well. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on that, because that seems to be a topic that's really up for discussion in the spiritual community.
I totally think it was a sleight of hand. I do. And it's like, change my mind, because I don't keep things because I can't handle truth. So I've gone to like, if I say something, it's not because I'm protecting some deeper truth I can't come to terms with. I truly think there was a sleight of hand, and changed my mind, because my mind can change. I change, even though I just keep changing back into Gnostic, like I'm okay with changing that. But what I have seen from my direct knowing and everything, I've actually tried to make things sound more chill than they actually are. And within this year, my high priestess has really come out and been like, no, you spent last year figuring things out because you're responsible, but your truth is still your truth. So come from that now. I believe I need to be responsible with my power, simply because I see how much something I could say can already get lost in translation when somebody leaves a comment. So, and I'm not saying that in a bad way, but I understand now that when I share something and it's alarming, I need to be responsible and just not throw it out. And then, so because of that, I feel like I've really done a container time of like things. And this year, with all of the content I presented, I think that it's like really aligned. But
I would 100% agree. Diana, it looks like you had a question over there.
Oh, just that, as someone who was very polarized, like the visceral separation is known, like the self-sabotage that could once have happened was schizophrenic level. You know what I mean? Like of a different self that would do things that would ruin the actual me's life. You know what I mean? But they would do it because they're evil. And we all have that part inside of us, right? So I completely agree, like the demiurge and all the story, yes, but that it's the same being. But it's like it rips itself off because we're all ripped off little pieces. But that's probably what caused the separation, is it did something so much that it ripped off and separated. But it was the same thing. And they even say in the old Greek things about man and woman being the same, but they separated them. Like maybe it's even the man and woman that ripped apart. But would you agree that once upon a time, that thing that betrayed was the same thing? It just betrayed itself to such a degree that now it thinks it's separated, but it is created a separate entity. So yes, it is like a very separate entity, but that will one day go back away and come back together.
Yes. So when I was growing up, I just thought I was a freak with gender issues. I didn't know the world was the freak with gender issues. And I'm the world. So, um, I have been extra responsible with things, but looking back, nothing that happened in my life everything was divine because of the truth rather than, oh, you're coming from wounding or trauma. It was my truth has always been like, I'm deeply like integrated. And that's just like, I have many trials this lifetime, but integration wasn't one of them. And so I know why now. And that's because that's my medicine for the world. The Christ archetype is the Christ consciousness is androgynous. And it's the one that can go the highest because it's the middle pillar. And as you go higher or ascend in consciousness, things get extra effing confusing. It'll look like Satanism. It'll look like Luciferianism. Who do you think you are? God? Like it gets so, and you have to, you have to, if you're honest, go through a refinement of, is this a dangerous belief? Is this whatever? But once you purify that, that's called integrating. When you integrate that, you'll go higher and pop out of the demiurge. And that's what I meant when you said, was there a sleight of hand? The sleight of hand, this is just my truth. But I think that we signed up for something because we're God. But once we got in here, we kind of got what could be looked at as trapped. And that on your way into ascension, you grab all the parts. So, and that's androgynous in nature. So, and as you go up, it gets harder. The gaslight and the confusion gets harder because now the hall of mirrors before you leave is amplified. So you have to look at all the different ways that your beliefs are distorted through like a huge movie projection. But ultimately, they're helping you if they don't confuse you and you fail or you just don't get out.
I'm with you on that. No, and it's very, and I agree with what you're saying. When you do start to, it almost like you're peeling back the layers of it all. It's like the energetic layers, and you're peeling them back. And with as you peel back these energetic layers, the perspectives change, and the what can be thrown at you as far as information wise, it can get trickier. I mean, I completely agree with what you're saying, and this actually is a perfect time to segue into my next topic I wanted to get with you about. So this is about one of your older shows. It was one that I truly enjoyed a lot. And I'm just going to kind of preface it with this. This has kind of been a big thing in the awakening community, not just in the spiritual camp. As of 2020, after everything that happened, a lot of the conservative Christians got lumped in, kind of came into the awake community. And I'm happy about it because the more the merrier. I mean, don't get me wrong. But, your video on the teachings of Christ and how they got lost in translation. I think that this is just, I even think that this video is important even now. Because in my eyes, from what I'm seeing, and I'll get your opinion on this, I feel that the modern form of the teaching is almost a form of spiritual warfare. And the reason why I feel that way is because it makes you, it separates you from the divine, and it separates you from your fellow humans, and it instills you into a state of fear. And so I guess where I'm getting at with this, I'll digress, is, what do you feel was truly lost in the true teachings of Christ that we can benefit from today, and that you feel that potentially a lot of modern Christians could benefit from today as well?
Yeah. So fun fact, when I started my YouTube channel, once again, just like free will, but free will is Christ, as I already said, I never knew that I would be teaching Christ consciousness. I thought it would be a video that I do because it's one of the many things inside my knowledge base. Christ conscious, like one could say, I don't want to say it in like a base way, but like, it's like recruited. Like like the more I was teaching, the more it was just Christ consciousness. So then I was like, oh, okay, I'm teaching. So then I had to start really connecting with Christ consciousness stronger in what that was and not the things around it. And what I had learned from that was things that is, once again, back to Gnosticism. This wasn't like I read this in a book or I saw a video and this is what it Christ consciousness from my own gnosis, meaning my own direct experience, just not even having it's not bad or not good. This is how it is. This is the importance of it. Moving on. Yeah, I never moved on because the direct experience of my cognizance kept showing me and teaching me things, and they all fall under what's known as the Gnostic Christ. Mm-hmm. So that's why I keep saying I'm Gnostic on like by nature, because those teachings were really true, and they're not because I like read it from a book. Like I lived the cognizance of it. So how that got mixed up was where they turned the person Jesus into just a savior for the demiurge, when Christ consciousness is always the opposer, the one that awakens you out of the demiurge. So they manipulated the teaching to make you still just go back around, like make a U-turn back into their soul trap.
I would completely agree with that. And I think, when we, and I'm sure you resonate with this, when we, view ourselves as separate from, the divine or Christ itself in the form of consciousness. I think that that's really where it starts to separate itself from an actual spirituality and starts to become more of a I would even coin a demiurgic control structure. And, since we're kind of going into this, I know you did your video on the demiurge, and I really liked that video. And if you don't mind just elaborating a little your perspective on the demiurge for our viewers, because I found yours to be one of the most unique. It wasn't just there's an angry person that are there's the offspring of Sophia and the divine light decided to come down and just trap all of us and things like that and imprison us here. But I found your perspective to be so unique. So if you don't mind elaborating for our viewers, that would be really awesome.
Absolutely. Okay. So remember how I just said earlier, like, yeah, I agree with you about the sleight of hand. That would suggest that the demiurge is externally oppressing us. And even though things of that nature are on a spectrum, meaning yes and no, you're never going to truly help a soul step into sovereignty if you just tell them what you believe, and then, or even that, like the most intense version of that. So it strengthens a person's own ability for understanding when you're more objective about something and you give them the full spectrum and leave something that sometimes I'm not the open-ended police. I don't need to worry about leave that open-ended, but I felt very called for some of my videos to leave it open-ended. And the demiurge, somebody needs to really connect with that in an open-endedness, and not me just teaching from Gnostic teachings about what the demiurge is. Because even if you teach someone something from that, it's still, remember how I said earlier, it's a base teaching. You're going to get not the true spiritual knowledge of the essence. Instead, it will become an outer shell of the true teaching. And that's what will once again feed the fundamentalism, or what I was calling earlier, the sensationalism. And that's also circling back to why I believe this is, for the time being, and if I change my mind, I change my mind. But for now, my truth is that there's a sleight of hand because of how much I see people currently falling into the fourth density. So my conclusion isn't one based off of anything malicious or anything even benevolent. It's just based off of like, wow, I didn't think it was this hard, but it must be this hard. So that's what's making me go like, this must be a sleight of hand.
I'm with you. I'm with you on that. And I've always called it the detriment. That was the I guess the word that came to me on that. Diana, do you have any thoughts about this or any questions?
Yeah, I like your perspective on Gnosticism, because when you're studying Gnosticism, it's easy to throw it all away as fourth dimensional, as the stories of the Greeks and Zeus and Athena. They're beautiful and they have fourth dimensional truth, but there's many variants. And when there's so many variants, like especially on Sophia herself, it's like she's evil, she's good, she's Christ, she's Lucifer. Like, what is I've heard you say she's everybody. We're all her, right? Yes. And I can see that. And then that starts to, you just paint the picture that attaches with that internal truth that I have, like that check mark to be like, yes, this is it. Because otherwise, like, you're left in the wind. You're left going, well, I've heard this and I've heard that and I've heard this and I've heard that. But it's not till you hear that thing that's just your inside self is just yes. So that's just what I hear when I hear yours. And because of these stories, there's no way to be like, logically, this is why it's true. But it just hits that point and it brings together all those things that it just sits, and it's the one.
Yeah, and Sophia specifically is the descent into matter. That's literally, if we took the text from, or if we took this concept of Gnosticism from its most metaphysical, it's descent into matter, and then the redemption arc of ascension. But for that, there would be dealing with the temptation, the seduction of amnesia. So we would have to deeply look within about what is keeping us so addicted to the amnesia. And that's what I was alluding to earlier when I said, like, see, I don't see many people going past the fourth density. It's not necessarily because the sleight of hand is all external. In fact, one could say from the largest level, it's just base consciousness. Base consciousness, from the largest level, it's repression.
Okay.
Yes, I can see. Yes, because we're deeply packed with that. Like, it's generational, it's ancestral. Like, that is, I always have this toy that I use on my show. One of those kids' toys that are balled up, and you go like this, and it opens. Because that's what we're doing. Like, we're expanding into these, and that's the calling it the knowing. Like, we already know these things. And then the more we hear the actual truth, but being stuck in that fourth dimensional place, like we were talking earlier, getting stuck in prophecy, getting stuck in narratives, getting stuck in what they said once upon a time, Christianity, every single religion, you're now boxed. That's your fourth dimension, and you could stay there forever. Like, but that's not going to do us even any good, even if it's a good box, even if you think you're in like the good Christian box and you're perfect or whatever your box is. This is why I don't like tarot cards and all those things, because I love tarot from like the Hermetic standpoint. But I mean, the people that use it go, oh, blah, blah, blah. No, because now you're making up a fantasy life, and you can stay there and live a perfectly happy life. You can even manifest in that life. But it's not going to do that overarching expansion of the whole world into that fifth dimensional, whatever we want to call it, space that we're heading into. So, like, we do need to leave that box. So I would ask, what is the best thing you would say to leave? I would say heart spark, like the heart awakening, this Christ consciousness. That's what I can't stop preaching myself. Do you have any other, like, to go up without getting stuck in a story?
So there's so many things that I want to make videos on from everything we've talked about today. But one of the things that I notice is, because I trace things back, I go like, where is that coming? Why is that? And so the demiurge, right? Things keep coming back to the demiurge. Why are people who are coming through the awakening pipeline, because we're pipelines now, everything's a pipeline.
I agree.
Now I'm like, even just using that to my advantage. I'm like, wait, let's hook up to that pipeline, right? Like let's hook me up to the Russell Brand pipeline. I'll take it. But if I'm at the end of a pipeline, it doesn't matter who's before me. But the funny thing is that what I keep tracing everything back to keeps coming back to a demiurge. So what is the demiurge? And what I've noticed is it's our concept of God. Remember how earlier I was talking about like, oh, mommy and daddy. Well, now take that parental figures that we have placed upon institutions of authority one step further. What's the highest level of authority? That would be God. So if our concept, which is fueling all of these different things going on, has to do with masculine and feminine hemispheres, right? But metaphysically, so we don't even notice it at this point. What I notice is one of the biggest ones is reevaluating our concept of God. And that's a hard one. So the videos, like, I'm going to do another demiurge video or Saturn video and stuff. Like, there's so many ones that I want to do. And it's really just about intuitively when the energies are right for it. But I would say how to really keep it fresh, how to keep us rejuvenated and not calcify into a false light system or some sort of polarization or something that's stopping us from our full growth. would be to the largest one at the end of that pipeline is our concept of God, because what's happening right now is the demiurge is everything about the feminine energy erased. And and then if you say anything like, well, God is female too, now you sound like an angry feminist who hates men, and that's just not true. But what I've traced everything back to, because I go, where is that? I trace things, I'm a shaman, I track things. When I track it back, it has to do with the demiurge, and the demiurge would be the imbalanced version of God. It would be the one that's in its wounded or toxic masculine and has erased the feminine. Does that mean that the feminine is not toxic too? No, I'll dish that out any day. There's toxic femininity, there's toxic masculinity, but we're in a masculine age. So that's just, that's just what's going on right now. And so what I trace things back to is people's conception of God. And then from there, it's like if you get the first numbers wrong on an equation, the rest of the math will just come out like, whoa, over time. It's just not going to be right. And it's because, coming back to that thread, we accidentally feed the demiurge if we don't go to the roots of our core spirit.
Understood. So the one thing I want to touch on two things. You know how what Diana was saying, it's the knowing. So I figured you would like this, Sarah. So I say at first you awaken, but then you remember. And that's something I want to put deep there. But so I remember one of your older videos. So would you say that potentially the demiurge would be the fourth density concept of God? Because I remember in one of your earlier videos, you were talking about this, on how in the fourth density, it's almost like these, what you would, you didn't use these exact words, but we'll say like the dogmatic archetypes of these entities essentially exist there. So you think you would sum it up in that kind of fashion, that the demiurge is the unbalanced fourth density concept of God that we need to revise and change?
Yeah, it's Saturn. And, but even Saturn is androgynous. Saturn has feminine aspects, and the ones who are using Saturn energy, the Satanists, they also honor really dark matriarchal energy from Saturn. So it's too simple for me to just say, yeah, it's a demiurge in that figure. But overall, what's happening is that energy and that expression of Saturn specifically, because Saturn has different, even in astrology, we know that okay, well, Pluto or Jupiter in its detriment acts one way, or Pluto in its fall acts this way. There's these 4 different phases. And so the same even with the demiurge, but to be more simplistic, yes, you are correct. Now, I have some team members. I have guides from the 4th density. So I'm not saying 4th density bad, 5D good.
Of course,
Yeah,
of course. I totally understand. I think, one thing we have to do, on this path is we have to, have that awareness of said fact that everything is part of this creation. Everything is part of this balance. And, there's aspects that we can learn from. I mean, that doesn't mean you buy a house there. You get a visa, you get a plane ticket, you go visit for a couple of days, and you explore it, and you get to know it. But no, you don't buy a house there. I think that's probably the best analogy I could use. So Sarah, there's a couple of things outside of the shows I want to talk to you about. We'll get back. There's as the spiritual community likes to argue sometimes, and always, and this is a huge topic of debate that has been circling the spiritual community for years. And I've honestly wanted to get your opinion on it last time, so we'll do it now. I call it the spiritual meat conundrum. And why I call it the spiritual meat conundrum is there's a lot of debate in the community when it comes to eating meat on your spiritual evolution. And there seems to be a whole bunch of different sources stating different things. Of course, a lot of people get their opinions up in arms, and it never ends well. But, so I would actually really like to pick your brain on your opinion about this, because it is such a highly talked about topic in spiritual evolution. So I'm curious about your thoughts.
Yeah, so I used to be a vegan, and when my autoimmunity really hit the fan, and I've healed it all now, but when my autoimmunity was at its worst, I kept trying to find a vegan doctor to work with me, and there was just none successful that I could find or whatever. And so what I ended up just having to do was start eating, meat again, but obviously only grass-fed beef. It was really hard for me at first, but my body was also muscle testing as needing meat. And so what I feel about that is two becoming attractions for most people. For most people, humanity, whoever is following the life wave, the regenerative stream of timeline, because there's more than one timeline going on. In case you can't tell, there's hell.
I know.
There's people
We're
going
going to talk about that next. We're talking about that next. But yeah, continue for sure.
So, so the ones that will literally go into crystalline form eventually, they won't be eating meat. And so there's so much truth going on, and it's enhanced the most within diet. And then you have people like Mark Passio, who I completely I revere, even though I don't agree with him anymore. But I've learned so much from Mark Passio. To circle back to, you asked like somebody who I've learned from, Mark Passio, and like straight up links natural law with being like, you are literally violating natural law when you eat meat, and that they set that up for us to eat meat, to eat flesh. Like they made us base consciousness by doing that. So, so I noticed that my body still needs meat to heal. Like I eat grass. I'm paleo. I'm like I'm super pure diet. Like I have like I'm the strictest person I know with diet. But that said, my consciousness, meaning like Sarah's mind, always wants to be vegan. Like it's very hard for me to eat meat. And I understand why there's vegans. And I wish that if there was one thing that people would have more compassion for the vegans and let them yell at us more. Like vegans yell at me and I'm fine, because I feel like I'm more in the wrong. And like, even though I think that they are not correct and that they have a lot of imbalances and distortions, I don't need to fight with them. Other people will give them those mirrors. I think that out of the two, like at least like people who are becoming heart-centered can at least see where they're coming from. So I mean, maybe people just don't like being yelled at, but vegans can yell at me.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Diana. Yeah.
I just wanted to, my sister's a vegan, so I feel you. I've tried many times. I got so sick. I have autoimmune too, although mine was going towards MS. And my hands would go numb when I would try to be vegan. So I eat meat. But do you have O blood? Because I've heard that O blood just cannot be vegan. Like their blood has not evolved. They cannot be a vegan, but someone with A or B has a better chance of being a vegan because they
Especially
are.
B.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm learning something here. This is cool. Keep on. Yeah, I'm learning something
with being vegan. My sister is a vicious, and if you know anything about sisters, I've heard you mention a brother. If you have a sister, like whoa,
yeah,
like they hold you on blast. Like they're the ones that keep that mirror shining at you and don't let you get away with anything. So when I feel her and I let her, I'm like, I know I'm a terrible person, but she is B blood and I have O blood, and I'm like, but my O blood, like I have tried. I literally one time was like, I will die trying. And then I literally started to get really sick. I'm like, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to die. I went back to meat. Like I was that serious because I feel it. And every time, and what I use it now for is I can get really like high just in my own energy and like not be grounded. Like that's just, I'm very fire and air. So I will eat meat purposely to bring me down, like purposely to ground me and pull me back like the balloon and tie it to the ground. Otherwise I'm like, woo. So because I don't like eating it either. I feel terrible.
And I feel you guys on that too. I mean, I feel that we, as a society and a civilization, we've become very disconnected with the life that is offering itself on our plates. And I come from the stance that, I look at a lot of, very ancient indigenous spiritual people who ate meat, but what they did that was different than what we do today is they showed gratefulness. They utilized the whole entire animal. Nothing was put to waste. And they transmuted their food. And that's one thing I think has been one of the biggest things, in this community is the negative energy that comes with the meat. That's been one of the talking points. But I feel like by showing gratefulness in that moment, you transmute that energy. One of the reasons I was I'm vegetarian pescatarian for at least 5 years, but this is what actually kind of made me go back into being what I would say a flexitarian. I always had these situations where people would offer me their food and it had meat in it. And, it's funny because I'm half Greek, half Italian. And, my upbringing, it's like disrespectful. Somebody offers you food, like, you know what I mean? They're sharing a piece of themselves with you. And, they're sharing a piece of their story. And to me, that's spiritual. So like, I kind of, I agree with a lot of the vegan side of the argument when it comes to the way animals are treated. I hate the USDA structure. I hate what they do. I hate monocultures. I don't like any of that stuff. And I think that really is what deteriorates not just the nutritional value of our foods, but the spiritual essence of the information that we're intaking. But I do feel that human on human relationships are also very important. And that's kind of what made me kind of swap back into that flexitarian.
Yeah.
So, I'm just curious on your perspective on that, Sarah. I mean, that's the thing. I get where the vegans are coming from. Like, it's the human ecosystem, and I'm on that. Trust me. But we also have to understand our human on human relationships are also in the same importance.
Absolutely. And I don't know vegans who are doing it right. Like there's a bunch of people who are junk food vegans and they're not healthy themselves. So I maybe know like one of my friends who's a raw coach who like did it right. But anyways, the veganism itself, I remove myself from the person saying the stuff because it's not necessarily coming from, a completely mind, body, soul, healthy person. And I'm looking more so about the heart field of information. And I think if we all did that and we like gave grace to get to the heart of even just beyond that, just anything, we could get to resolution sooner about something. But anyways, so when it comes to that, like, I'm okay. I look forward to being a vegetarian one day. And so I'm very flexible on the scale, like I see myself one day, maybe I'll be raw vegan. I'm okay with that if that's what's in alignment for my mind, body, and soul one day. I would actually love that. But I'm looking more for the mind, body, and soul alignment with diet than anything else.
And I would completely agree with you. And I think it is. It has to be in alignment with you, and it's your mind, body, and soul. And I think in that way, there's many ways to go down. And that's why I talk about how the crown chakra has thousands upon thousands of lotus petals, because these are all of the thousands of ways to connect with the divine. And I feel that that there's a lot of different ways to go about this too. But let's talk about timelines, because it's really interesting. As before you hopped on, I was talking with Diana about this. I was theorizing that yes, we could say there's a lot of potential timelines, but we have two major ones, I would say, at least in my eyes, that are currently playing out right now. And I was even entertaining the theory that potentially what the quote unquote rapture event could be would be the split in this timeline, would be the actual split. And then the people who are on the frequency of New Earth, the humans who are on the frequency of New Earth, will move into that frequency, while the people who want the new, or who I not say they would consciously want, it might be subconsciously built into them per se, but they're okay with the authoritarian, totalitarian New World Order, and they're okay with all of this that's happening. And they talk about the 7 years of tribulation. We talk about that, and potentially what I theorize that could be is that we will move into this frequency, while the individuals who need to learn about what's really going on here will go through what they need to go through, and then 7 years after that, these timelines will meet again. And then what will happen is people who want to move into the new earth frequency at that time will be able to. I'm curious on what your thoughts are on the timelines that are going on right now. It's always been such a profoundly interesting topic. Again, I buy a plane ticket and I check it out. I don't live in that concept, but it's always been up for discussion. So I'm just curious about your thoughts, Sarah.
Yeah, so a part of my mission is to really activate the optimal timeline, the higher timeline. And yet that's not something that I see fully coming to fruition in this lifetime. And I'm fine with that, I'm just going to party with what is. But I will say this is something I've learned. Like, we don't have to be Buddhist, but everyone's got to come to terms with with the teachings that are best done through Buddhism is teaching. Even, maybe even more so than Gnosticism, I would end up just being Buddhist if I needed to call myself anything, because the Buddhism is the full, or at least moving towards the goal of liberation and done through non-attachment. And so what I notice is harming the collective the most is attachment in every form. And I'm just looking around and going wow, is it time for Buddha teachings? I'm still getting Christ consciousness, but Sarah, the Alchemist channel might, I don't know. I'm excited to see the evolution. You might see me a year from now just being straight up Buddhist with myself, because that's what the energies are calling for. The good thing about me is I'm not attached to what I am. So I could, if I saw a sneak peek of me a year from now, I was like, oh, okay. I would just be like, I must have had some gnarly shit happen. Cool. But when it comes to the higher and lower timeline, either one will really need non-attachment, because if the mind is always constantly trying to grab onto the pictures, and I'm not saying that it's all an illusion. Like, I have held back doing a video on the Dwapara Yuga just because I need to make sure the audience has a wide enough mind for it first. Not saying that it's small. My audience is so lit. I am constantly in reverence. So it's not because it's not lit. It's just to make sure that even the sidelines, even the peeps on the peripheral, because the Dwapara Yuga is a system, we're in Kali Yuga, people fight about that. That's fine. But the Dwapara Yuga is what we're calling that higher timeline. And that has a tower mode, that has chaos, wiping out everything. And what that is what you said, which is there's a splitting. It would be through that destruction.
Understood.
So the non-attachment, back to that, the reason I bring that up is because higher or lower, we would really need to embody pure presence, pure ability to be so centered within ourselves that we can have the trust of knowing that we're refining ourselves, but that also our higher self is at play. So we're not alone here. It's not just us here and we got to figure it out and get on there before musical chairs ends. It's more so about that non-attachment and that knowing of how much work we've done, how much awareness we're embodying. And that when we're doing that, there's grace. Grace comes in and says, this was never about tit for tat analytics. This was always about level of consciousness. When you're in that consciousness, grace takes over. So from there, that non-attachment helps us really step into the present moment. And that's when grace and Dharma open up all of that stuff. How that will play out, there's so many different ways that can play out. But what's coming through really strongest, which is why I mentioned it, is cataclysm, simply because the lower timeline at a certain point, here's the defining factor. The defining factor is when the frequency of beings who are ascending. So the universe works in a very merciful way, even though it might not look that way. How the universe in its higher, in its higher order looks is that it'll never leave a person hanging. That's why there's no such thing as being left behind. It's a choice. So it's a choice to awaken to the fact that you are something or not that not the paradigm of you're being saved or not. That's the false paradigm. So there's no such thing from the higher self's or from the higher universe's perspective as being left behind. So because of that, a timeline shift won't actually occur until every being whose frequency has the universe gives the mercy of like, while that person is pending, we're never gonna, just let a person be in pending. So the frequency shift at a certain point becomes collective, as I just said, where then something has to come in like that, where it's like, but then you have individual timelines. Yes. And so when you have individual timelines, you can't really say that that's what the Mandela effect shows, that people go, no, that's not how that played out. That it played out like that. So I might be saying on the other side of a rapture, or finally when the frequency shifted, that didn't happen that way. And you might be saying, Sarah, I swear, this is what really happened. So there's also that going on at the same time. Did any of that make sense?
All of it.
Yeah, all of it made sense. No, I think you explained it really well. And I think exactly it's the non-attachment. We have to learn to cultivate this non-attachment within us. And I've gotten cataclysm before myself. Diana, what about you?
Oh, with the cataclysms, I like what you said once when you said that it depends, because I'm all about timelines. Every single microsecond is a timeline shift. Every choice is a timeline shift with every moment. And like you said right there about the universe never leaves you hanging. And as somebody who used to be a whiny, poor me person who made the shift, every moment back in my poor me life, and it was deserved. There was reasons. There was things happening that were, oh no. There was a better idea. There was a calm down, Diana. There was a go over here, Diana. There was a let that person go, Diana. And I was like, oh, but I can't, So, but there's always that point. That voice is always there. You're never alone. There's always somebody there. Like the cartoons, that's real. Like there's always that person going, do the better thing. And that's the universe. And there's always the person going, do the worst thing. And that's just the whole game. And every time you listen to the good voice is a little shift up. And then about the cataclysms there, what you said, I see that as the living truth of the higher you raise up. And this is what I try to preach to people about the wars. They want to whine about the wars, and I don't want to be rude, but like the truth is that what's the solution? It's not more war. It's not more violence. We need to sit down and discuss things, and teaching people about metaphysics is actually the best thing to do, because if they understood all the variables in what they're dealing with, they would make completely different decisions. They're not dealing with all the facts. Like the politicians might as well be in kindergarten compared to somebody that like yourself or like Carl Jung or Matthias DeStefano is fantastic. Like if you guys or any of us that are like starting to come online, like if I could go back in time, I'd be a lawyer so that I could be more useful right now. Like, because there's things that could be done, but there just need to come from better brains that are listening to the truth. And so we're just heading that way. And then the more people that wake up, the less the cataclysms need to happen, because like the universe is on a mission regardless. And I always like to say, you're going to wake up or you're going to be shaked to death, literally. And that's the only choice. And it's up to you. And that's how I see it. So I'm all about timelines and shooting for the highest one.
Absolutely. And your audience might like After School's video he just did on narcissism, because it shows the political mind.
I watched that one. Yes. And yes, agreed.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because that's the next step before that graduates fully into like a higher density negative being. So that's a good video to watch on how it goes down that pipeline.
Yeah, I love that you guys did a thing together, because like he was someone else I watched. Sorry to cut you off. Keep going, but that was amazing.
No, you're all good. But actually, so this is actually, Sarah, this is my all-time favorite video of yours, and the one I'm about to bring up, because what you said about true ascension completely just hit me to the core. When it resonated so deeply with me, and this was one of the reasons why you became one of my favorite people on YouTube, because you have what I would say the most realistic interpretation of what ascension is. And I think a lot of people, they get caught up in the the loftiness that we're all just going to go poof into this instantaneously, this lofty different realm and all that. But the way you described it, it's channeling the divine consciousness and the higher self into your current avatar to reach the highest potential timeline that you can achieve, that can bring you closer to your own spiritual evolution and totality. And I have to say, I think the way that you laid it down is absolutely perfect. And I kind of want to ask you, like, when did you come upon this realization? Because, there's a lot of people out there who get caught up in a lot of the new age, what I would say glamour and all of that. And almost they become attached that there's going to be some kind of event that's going to occur, or there's going to be some kind of indicator that's going to mark the collective frequency shift. But, as you put it into words, it really comes down to our subjective frequency shifts that are going to essentially add to that collective. So I'm just curious on how you came to that, and, what kind of really made that ingrained in yourself as your truth, because I find that to be one of the most profoundly, deeply resonating explanations of ascension I've heard to date.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So the collective is something that I constantly synthesize.
Okay.
So I have a large bandwidth, and that allows me to really pull more than one group consciousness. So when I'm pulling more than one group consciousness and I'm holding that space for that, I then from there start tapping in to how to synthesize that. So that's how, like, for instance, I'll be more detailed. So let's say one group consciousness is coming from ascension teachings, like the ascension community, where they teach about the event. So I don't know if you heard about that. I don't know if you're part of
yeah, I remember you bringing it up. And what did you say, Diana? Sorry.
I heard many events that's going to happen that none have happened yet.
Not like this one. This one it was going to have. I don't even want to make fun of it, but I'm trying not to laugh.
I get what you're saying.
So it was pink fog. Pink fog is going to take over the earth, and everyone who couldn't handle the frequency of the pink fog was actually going to be taken up into spaceships to recalibrate from our star family.
Sounds like Scientology.
Yeah. Okay, so now you know I don't have friends. I come into the spiritual community. I go, everyone's wrong. Everyone's wrong.
But that's a good thing. That's a good thing. We need that. We need that.
Yeah.
We need that. Yes.
Yeah. So they're like, you're going to get taken up into ships. And so people who believe in that come a lot from the Dolores Cannon pipeline as well. Not all of them, but that's a strong also parallel pipeline, which is why I say that I hold space for more than one group consciousness, because it's not just one pipeline that I'm talking to per video, which is why sometimes people go, you sound convoluted, but then another person will say, you made the most sense ever. It's because literally, like, I'm speaking from a multidimensional viewpoint. So I could understand if somebody calls me convoluted because they were tuning in at a very low frequency and I sound convoluted at that frequency, but I'm talking to more than one frequency in my videos. So it's because I'm holding space for a lot of different groups that are asking for what I call a collective asking. So when I do a video, the reason I have the energy to do that video is because even if I want to do a video on a topic, energy is not right. It's because the collective asking isn't like being synchronistically orchestrated.
Your projectorness, you have to be asked to give it. Yes, that's a cosmic scale. That's amazing.
Yeah, so the collective asking about something, I like hold space for, not all of it. That's why I say, like, if somebody's a fundamentalist Christian, and there's nothing wrong with that, but like I can't hold space for that, or else I really will. You'll just be mad and you'll, yeah. But for like a specific, like I get like 8, it's going up to 10 group consciousnesses I hold space for. And then from there, I'm tuning in to literally all the different thoughts. And then from there, the belief systems from that, and then but how this and that. So when I'm giving a message, it's it takes a lot of corpus callosum power of like from myriad to matter, from spirit to words, to just synthesize all of that. So I'm synthesizing the information, and that's basically how, when I did that ascension video, I was tapping into a large collective asking about the mechanics of ascension. And so that was what I was getting as a synthesis. So that wasn't necessarily like Sarah knew that in advance. And maybe I did. I have a bad memory. So maybe I did know that in advance. But the point being is that when I teach, it's more so that things get put inside a melting pot. And by there, I'm trying to clarify that belief. And so that merged, that belief met up, that group consciousness met up with another group consciousness in the club of my heart. And that was the answer I gave. Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Absolutely. Diana, what do you think about that?
Just that's what you do. That is your thing, is taking all these things and putting it together. And like how you can be a Buddhist and a Gnostic, because you take them and put them together. And it's like, that's just what you do. Like, the synthesizing of information is so real. And I feel like there's something to that to actually help the collective. And how I think like the ones that are that people's NPCs, back to that will filter down through them, because you are truly synthesizing information, and that whole we're all collected trickles down to like people like us, like we were saying, like it comes down to us, and then we break it up even further for the people like even like that are not getting anything. And it's just all that, because it's impossible to put it in human words, as you said earlier. Like, it's impossible to like, it's not impossible. You make it possible. Like, you do it and make that possible. And you're like, that's it. That's what I feel is the truth. And you're saying it in human words, and it's just bam, it's thrown together. So like, that's just fantastic. And the whole world is going to probably change because of it.
Well, thank you. Well, Sarah, before we start winding down, there's one topic I wanted to talk with you about, and it's a topic that I'm very passionate about. I haven't seen you do a strict video on it per se, but I've seen you bring it up in a few of your videos. So the lost organic technology that we supposedly had in antiquity. So I have been myself researching this a lot, and trying to potentially remember things about it as well. There's a lot of different definitions of what this organic technology could be, or what it could potentially hold, in the abilities that it had. So I'm just curious, in your eyes, what would your definition of this organic technology be? And do you think some of it exists today? I do think so. I do think, and I'll get to that after you're done, but I definitely want to hear your thoughts.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's technology to completely purify the ocean. There's technology for everything. There's technology to completely regenerate the human vessel as it is now. Not something where like, oh, they're working on it, they're going to get to it someday. Like, anything that is the technology that we think is cutting edge today is probably about maybe, to be generous, like 5,000 years behind. Like, there's just like, so, but here's the thing, like in the fifth density and beyond, we don't even need technologies. So the fourth density, and there's nothing wrong with that. I already believe we're in the fourth density, but then I go like, is that even an important topic to make a video on? Maybe one day when there's not more important topics, I will do a fourth density topic. Maybe somebody will push the right spiritual ego buttons on me and say, you don't even know we're in the fourth density. And then my ego will go, oh yeah, I'll make a video where I show you, but we're already in the fourth density. And I don't want to confuse people further, so I don't really talk about that. But we're in the fourth density. And so in that, there's like not something wrong with technology per se that is going to be of like a higher nature, just like how with everything, there's like higher and lower. And so it's just that we're given the Anunnaki junk technology, and and it actually literally decays us. It turns us, it actually cuts us off from our spiritual link. So scalar technology, to answer your question, would be something that falls more on the like higher, because scalars outside of the electromagnetic field. Electromagnetic field could be seen as a lower plane of ether. where it now goes, to create. So it's not lower in a bad way. It's slower in emanations to get to the physical realm for creation. So scalar's above that. And so because of that, you're just like how the more you awaken, the more now your higher self you're more aligned with your higher self. So now your timeline shift faster. Scalar technology is something that's more organic because it's more in its spiritual form than electronic. By the time it's electronic, it's even been called like dying light.
Exactly.
Mystics have called it dying light before, literally.
I would see. Do you potentially think that, at least for the human body, do you think that anything involving the Vedic sciences and potentially, anything that's involving a lot of the spiritual practices that a lot of the Eastern practitioners do could potentially be, in some ways, what I would say some old form of this? I wouldn't even call it scalar technology, but some old form of healing, a type of healing that humans can potentially do. I mean, we look at a lot of these, ancient yogis and these ancient monks who could do very interesting things and could, live to extremely long lifespans, almost unheard of. I'm just wondering if you think that could be a potential starting point or a place we can look, when we come to kind of uncovering this remembering that we're going through.
Yeah, so Tantra literally means technology. So our instrument literally is our most advanced cutting edge technology. With that, the same exact practices, even my video on the sacred secretion, like the same practices that were used in certain ages don't always transfer over to needing to still be used. Just like how if we mastered something one lifetime, our karma, or AKA our fate coming into one life, might be a certain way because we've closed out, we've created mastery, therefore completion around something. So with that, it would depend on the individual. One individual might greatly benefit from something that was like eventually the origins of the sacred secretion. But as you already knew, came from Vedic practices and knowledge. So one person might genuinely benefit from that. And another person might be doing that right now as we speak, like for years, and it's actually not helping them at all. And actually, this is when we get to like afterlife stuff. The crazy part is that one person who might have just been really dedicated to certain spiritual practices, even the sacred secretion, might have never shifted frequencies, and someone else who might have gotten the gnosis out of something but not have done the laid out groundwork for it might progress way farther. That's a crazy thing. So it's non-linear.
I would completely agree with you, and I think it's individual based when we're talking about this. I've just always found it so profoundly fascinating, and I know you've definitely dived into that area before, and I think and maybe you'll resonate with this as we close out. I think what we really need to do is to take a look at a lot of these spiritual books and a lot of these religious books, and we need to relate them to the symbolism of the human body. And I brought up an example for this. We talk about the 144,000. We talk about, there's 144,000 lotus petals in the crown chakra. We got the 144,000 nadis in our body. We have the 144,000 energetic light rays that come from our energetic system. And I think maybe if we start doing that, we can start to remember more. I think that's really a big taking point we can take from a lot of this, is it has to do with us, the human body. And I'm just curious about your thoughts on that.
Yeah. And just to tie something in really quick, you said you were making an emphasis earlier about 7 and 7 for the timeline split. And 7 in symbology, in esoteric symbology, just means fullness. So even applying the technicalities of the 144 in an internalized way means fullness. And that fullness coming into that specifically with the 144 is definitely something that this is how the universe works. multiply. So one connection we can make doesn't need to be negated by another truth or dominated by another truth, but a representative of the multifacetedness of the higher order of this universe. And then how much our consciousness expands, we'll be able to see more of those facets, integrate more of those facets. That doesn't mean everything is. I'm not saying this to negate like everyone's right. No, that's not true either. But truth is a multiplicity as well as an objectiveness. And so because of that, what I hear when you're talking about this aspect of 144 and this aspect of 144, and that aspect is kind of like there's 144 is like a core objective reality of an enlightened being.
Very much so. Very much so. And that's really interesting. And you know what? And this is what I'm going to say as we close out, Sarah. If there's anybody who's doing what we're doing right now, I am grateful for you. I'm 100% grateful for you and what you do. I mean, I'm sure you hear it all the time. Don't get me wrong, but I'm serious. Like, you have not only, helped people like me integrate a lot of these spiritual concepts, into our daily lives and how to utilize them, in our walking around everyday consciousness. I feel that you deliver, you see it for how it is. You're not dolling it up, or putting, like you were saying, like you were having with some of your listeners or the people who listen to you, you're not delivering this message in any sort of dress or disguise. You are delivering the message as you receive it and how it comes to you. And I think we need more of that. And I just wanted to emphasize how grateful I am for you, and keep doing what you're doing. Like, seriously, it contributes so much to the collective. And Diana, do you have anything you'd like to say?
That's perfect. Yeah, like completely agree. Extremely grateful. Thank you, because it's not easy. YouTube doesn't pay anything, probably. Like, I don't. And then you said you have your energy healing business, which is great, and that you just do this because you feel the calling, and we feel the calling, but your calling is just that. You're ripping open the barriers that we've been locked under. Like, there's depths found in what you say that I don't find in ancient books. Like, there's the synthesizing. So I'm just repeating myself, but yes. And like what you're doing, so grateful. Thank you for coming on and talking to us. That's another thing you do that's amazing. Like, there's people when they get big and they only talk to other big channels, but you come on and you talk to everybody. And it's just, well, I don't know if you talk to everybody, but like, you're here and we appreciate it. And thank you so much.
Well, now this is the living demonstration of receiving so much you want to give. Like, I truly appreciate this feedback. This is why you're my audience. So thank you. And I mean, beyond audience, thank you for your guys' light work. I'm speechless at just how open-hearted and beautiful that was to share with me that. And so how I would like to give that back is, I'm deeply grateful for the divine masculine energy to be able to communicate truth directly. I honor the divine masculine's highest power in that. And that's kind of like in a different parallel way, what I heard you say when you're so appreciative of me being able to really, without filter, cut to the heart and the truth of that. And so I just wanted to give recognition to the divine masculine energy for that. And I'm speechless at how much you guys have been so beautiful to me.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Well, if you don't mind hanging out for just a second after we get done, I'm going to sign off. Guys, thank you so much for joining me for another BG-Cast Wednesday Live podcast with the Alchemist Sarah, the second round she's been on my show. This will be available as soon as we get off as the replay, and it will be available on all other podcast platforms. Sarah, I do have your links to your YouTube channel, your Instagram, and your Facebook in the description of the Rumble and the YouTube videos. But if there's anywhere else people can find you, especially your energy healing business, why don't you let them know now?
Yeah, you could go on alchemicalenergyhealing.com. if you'd like to see what my sessions entail and reach out to my office. Yeah. So, and then what you already had said, but my YouTube channel is where I do put the most attention and labor of love to. So that's where you can find me.
Awesome. Well, guys, thank you again for joining me for another BG Cast Wednesday live podcast. I will be back next week with a really interesting topic we're going to break down, and I will let you guys know what that is on Sunday. It's a little surprise I've been kind of hiding in my back pocket for a while now. So, alrighty, guys, thank you so much again for joining us. Thank you, Diana, for being here too, and you guys have yourselves a wonderful night. Take care.